Professor Yoko Hayami for the very good presentation in terms of laying out the kind of historical developments and on the Christianity among the current in both in Burma and Thailand. I think this is very good work in terms of describing the history of what you said about native evangelists or the go-betweens were saying in the very simple ways that the current Christian or what Father Vinai said about the current missionaries, right? And then those are very good archives and information that you have looking for, and then you found in various places, and then you put together as the academic article on this. And then more than that is that you kind of try to analyze it in the ways that the role of the native evangelists or the go-betweens, and try to put argument in the concept, the academic concept on the culture of evangelism, right? In the case of current people here. I think this is very good work, and I have learned a lot on reading your article here. And anyway, I have 3 points that I would like to raise here, because I'm not an expert on current studies, and I know nothing about especially the Christianity among the current people as well. So I would like to first to see the linkage between Christianity among the current and the monk that I study. If what you said or you found is that 1880s was the time that the decade that Christianity came to Thailand, to northern Thailand, right? So 1880s, so among the current in northern Thailand. Then among the Hmong people here in northern Thailand, Christianity came to them very late. It's about 70 years later. I mean, in 1950, 1951, up until 1950, 1951, that the OMF missionaries who came from China after the 1949 revolution in China. So the Western missionaries then, move out of China, and then many of them end up by working with the ethnic minority in northern Thailand here. So by 1950, 1951, then some of the OMF missionaries went to the Hmong villages in northern Thailand here in Ta province, or in even to the Hmong people in Mae Hong Son and Wat Jan area as well, Dong Sam Mun, right? So by that time, I also found that the Western missionaries, then accompanied by current assistant or current Christian to the Hmong villages in early 1950s. Right? So I can see the linkage between current and Hmong Christianity, which among the Hmong started very late. Right? The second point here, if compared with the Hmong case, I would like to say that to emphasize that the context are very important. Context of becoming Christian, context of the vast evangelization among the Hmong people, no matter in China in about early 1900s, 1910, 1920s, the Western missionaries then start working with the Hmong people in Yunnan and Guizhou provinces of China, and even known by the missionary themselves or later found by scholars, they found that the reason that the Hmong became Christian because of the pressure by the Yi landlord, who are kind of dominate the Hmong people as the minority, who have less power. So when the Western missionaries came, then the Hmong then want to take part of the Western missionaries on helping them to release or get rid of the Yi landlord people. So this is the context, the situation that caused the Hmong people in Guizhou or Yunnan province to become Christian, right? More than that is the kind of what was known by the missionary by that time is that the illness treatment by the missionaries then caused the Hmong people to become Christian a lot, because they want to see the missionaries who are also both preaching and then treat the simple illness among the local people. So it caused them to become Christian, right? So this is the context that caused them to become Christian. In the case of Laos and Thailand, what I can say, the context is that when the Hmong in Laos and Thailand start to move from the mountain village to live in the lowland village among the Lao and the Thai people, then they want to adapt to the lowland or the mainstream culture, but instead of becoming Buddhist followers, then they become Christian. It was just the time that Western missionaries reached them, so they found, the Hmong people then found that the way that Western missionaries teach them and the way that missionaries teach them how to perform ritual is more kind of simple, and then can be very easy on making a living in the lowland context. So what I can say on this is that in the modernity context, right, they want to become Christian because they want to be modern like the Western people and other lowland Lao or Thai people, right? And among the Hmong who became refugees from Laos after 1975 and then being settled in the third countries in the West, especially in the US, in such context, in the context that they're being scattered in different states in the US and then separate from their relatives. So in such context, then many of them then become Christian because they do not know how to perform the Hmong ritual as they perform in Laos or when they were refugees in the refugee camps in Thailand. So in such context in the Western countries, then many of them then being converted to be Christian. But more than that, the new role of, if I want to compare with your study in the case of what you say here is a native evangelist or the current pastors. The Hmong also happened in this as well. After the Hmong Christian from Laos became refugees in Thailand, and by that time many of them became Christian leaders already, and then they also use the shortwave radio programs record in Thailand and later on in the US, and then sent to Manila to broadcast to some mainland Southeast Asia among the Hmong people here. So this is the new context and the new mechanism that the Hmong Christians or pastors then use in order to evangelize the Hmong people to become Christian. And up to the present, what I found on my study is that the Hmong evangelists or pastors in the US and in Thailand play very significant roles, very important roles on preaching the Hmong people in Thailand, in Burma, in Laos, and Vietnam to become Christian, especially the Hmong Christian from the US, and set up their bases here in Thailand and work together with the Hmong pastors here in Thailand to cross the borders to other neighboring countries and then to convert the Hmong people in other countries to become Christian. So if compared to the case of the current, maybe the Hmong has just became Christian recently, right? Since 1950s only. So then back to your issue in terms of the role of the native evangelist in the case of the current. For sure, I know that you base your work on the archives that you found, but I wonder what my questions are. First, what are the relevant contexts or situation in those days in 1860s that Western missionaries and the native evangelists work together in that context? If there is any, if you can kind of conceptualize your work on the political or the cultural or social context by that time, then it would make us to understand more about what are the different roles of the Western missionaries and then the current pastors at that time, right? Whether the ideology of, or what you call the imperialism ideology, caused the Western missionaries to take the current Christian as only the assistants or as the co-workers or whatever, right? What are the different roles of the two groups of people who try to convert the current people in the case of Burma? The second question is that the mechanisms or the strategies. What you mentioned in your paper, in your presentation, is that they kind of travel or walk from village to village, from mountain to mountain, and then have a kind of face-to-face preaching, right? And then also you mentioned a bit about the book, right, as a mechanism or the tools for the either the Western missionaries or the current native evangelists. I wonder, is there any other mechanisms, especially the later, if you found on your study, in the case of Wat Jan or other areas, any other mechanisms or strategies or tools that the Christian people then use to convert the current people? And the last question is around um, how the culture of evangelism among the current in Burma and Thailand has been changed, especially in the present time. If you could compare in those days in 1860s, right, and then up to the present, what are the different roles of the current evangelists in those days that you found in those archives, and then in the present time, if compared to your studies, especially in the case of Wat Jan or Kalayani Wattana area. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to respond a little bit before we open? Yeah.
Thank you so much for very good questions, difficult to answer questions also, and comments. Really appreciate. First, from Brother Vinai, the use of, I think the two big points were the use of the term evangelist and conversion. And for evangelist, this is sort of a compromise. I didn't know what it means. And I didn't want to confuse with the Western missionaries, which often happens in other things that I have written, I have read, that talk about the foreign, they talk about the Karen missionary, and I'm wondering if it means the missionaries who worked among the Karen or the Karen who were missionaries. So it becomes very confusing, and this is probably the only reason why I try to use some different word, but I'll have to think about. And I see your point about because it sort of already sort of makes the differentiation from the beginning by using a different word. And the other word, conversion, is also, this is a really actually a very interesting question, because I've always wondered, when does the Karen convert? Or when does anyone convert? And so I was talking about how the masses of people flock to the border to have the foreign missionary baptizing. So is it the point of baptism that some change, big change happens, or is it the big change that happens beforehand that they decide to get baptized? And which is the most important? Which is a big point. And from the point of view of the institution of the Christian church, it's probably the point of baptism that's very important. But from the point of view of the person who changes him or herself, the decision or the point where the decision to change the life, to stop doing the rituals, to change the life, is probably the big point. So conversion, the word conversion itself should be used more carefully. And if there's another word, maybe I should think about it. But to be baptized is one point, but to be baptized is probably not the point of conversion. So I don't know what is a good, maybe Christianized to become a Christian person. Bhagyazwa is probably the, and then when did you become a Yuwa person is the usual way I used to ask questions in the village, but then that would probably be for the person him or herself, the point where they decided to stop the ritual. And then when did you blur tea, which is the baptizing point. So it's something that I really need to think about. And also I get your point that it has a negative connotation. I see what you mean by it. And Ajahn Prasit, his question. First, what was the relationship between the missionary and the Karen native evangelist. It's interesting to the documents come in various layers, and if I read the very official missionary reports, you only see the missionaries working, and it's as if missionaries did all the work, and it's hardly the native evangelists are hardly mentioned in the very official reports. And then you start reading the journals and diaries, and then the evangelists come in, but often they are not even named. They just say the pastor or the teacher. And only after reading very carefully the handwritten manuscripts or whatever, I get to note down the names of the current workers. So I think that was the relationship that from the point of view of the missionary, they were workers. And even though, as I read some of the passages, they were very appreciative of the work of the current natives. That was the relationship from their point of view. And from the current workers or the native evangelists' point of view, it's very difficult to say, because the only voices I can pick up are from, for example, the letters they wrote to the missionaries, or the diaries they wrote in the Morning Star, which is they already have in mind that this is going to be read by the missionaries. So it's hard to say what they thought, but in what I read, they're always saying, "Dear Papa," referring to the missionary. So it's that kind of I think, relationship. The strategy, I think ones that I can easily think of is, as you say, medicine is one thing. And I think everybody will agree is music is another a very instrumental part of the mission work. And this is not to say that it's, for example, because of the medicine that they converted. I think it's a very complex process itself. So, and what was this is the most difficult question. How has the culture of evangelism evolved in the current churches today? I think I have other friends who can maybe help me in that respect. I think there is still a very strong element of once one becomes a Christian, that one needs to go out and spread the word, but it's much less obvious than obviously what was happening in the first churches. I think it's, in a way, I'm talking about it as more institutionalized, because every current church will, for example, have a budget to be used for evangelistic work. I remember once I was in the village. Now every Christmas time they would go out on a truck, pickup truck, and go to a village that was much newly Christianized, and help them do Christmas and to strengthen their faith. And so I think there's, with the start of the home missions, I think it was built into the system, the church organization, that important work is evangelism, and that has still held on. But more on a everyday, day-to-day basis, I cannot say much, and I think my friends can help me.
Okay, thank you. Now we would like to open for questions, comments, and more discussion from the floor, especially from those who are already related to the evangelist work. No? And already the question from a speaker about culture of evangelism nowadays, but how is it? Also, Jan Paul is here. Chanampon, again, Arati. Yeah. No about Christianity. ค่ะ
Thank you very much, and I would like to know about your book that Ajahn Kwanchewan mentioned, based upon your dissertation on Karen in Madjam, your book. Okay, I would like to have information. Secondly, I think this is more a comment. I'm a product of the Presbyterian Missionary School in the city of Chiang Mai, and I'm a bit. When I was young, I saw some Karen from Sameng coming down to Marim Marketplace. Didn't know who they were, and I also saw some monks coming in to trade and so on. I didn't know anything about them, even though my father was a district chief, until I came to the Presbyterian Missionary School, the Prince Royal College, and became a very close friend with another, student. And I didn't know that he is a Karen and Karen Thai, because his mother is Karen, until I went to visit him at home. And they live in a compound, a huge compound of missionary, Karen missionary. I didn't realize that he spoke, at that time, Karen with his grandfather and all the boys in the missionary house in the compound of Kun San, Kan Keo. He's the first, I learned later on that he's the first Karen who got education through missionary school and became a bank manager of some kind in Chiang Mai. So, and then, again, I'm more familiar with the Prince Royal College missionary, not evangelical, and then the seminary school and the nursing school and the boys' schools, the girls' schools and leprosy, work and besides education and health and so on. But that's followed the American mode of missionary. But until later on now, I have no question on whatever that I'm going to ask later on, whether through your archival work you run into anything about gender, about female missionaries, that the West, I assume this is the American model, came throughout China, Laos, and Burma and Thailand, because of historical context, as Ajahn Prasit mentioned. Whether or not anything at all the Karen native evangelical come up with their own female, native, Karen female native evangelist. That's my main question. And looking a little bit now, I talked to these young people who came to attend this, and I took note on how female outnumber of male seminary school at the present time. At that time, some of my Prince Royal College high school graduate friends, who were very close, they poor, couldn't go on to universities. And then they attend that missionaries seminary school, but none female classmates. Only female high school classmates. They were poor. They attended nursing school, the McCormick, and that seemed to be, the stepping stone way back before I got to know this. That's my main question, that whether or not you saw some kind of evidences, anything at all, what Ajahn Prasit would term local mechanism that this Korean, way back as a record show, that they branch out from the American model by male-dominant missionaries and down to the female. And I think I would see in the future, this is the hope, the female Karen native evangelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajahn Suriya. I would like to collect some more comments or questions, no? Maybe 2-3 more questions.
My name is Tender. I am a teacher at Siloam Bible Institute. I'm just an English teacher there. I've never been to a Bible seminary. So, but I am a Karen, originally from Burma, who came to Thailand 27 years ago. So to me, it's like a long history of my own history that I have never known. So I learned my own history here as a Christian. But and I am not familiar with those difficult terms. That is why I would like to ask very simple question as an ordinary Christian, that what is this book you are writing, or a research or thesis, I don't know, trying to answer the question? Are you trying to address any question from this research? This one.
This one.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think from what I listened, there was a question that I remember from the very beginning, that like the Karen Christians are not true Christian. Then I have a question: how did they measure? How did they measure, and did they mention about anything that they measure, whether the Karen Christians were true Christians or not? And also, for the word evangelist, for me as a Karen, to become an evangelist is not a cultural, for me, it's not a cultural thing. It is more a spiritual thing. So those people in a very early time, they involved in all the evangelism work. It was because I believe that as a Christian, the Holy Spirit, worked in them, stimulated them. We call it, it is the call from God. So they were just responding to the call of God. As myself, I was born to a Christian family, grew up in a Christian family, but until I think it's 7 or 8 years ago, I didn't hear the call of God. So when I heard, I believe that it was the call of God, I quit my job to become a missionary or evangelist of my own understanding, because I've never been to a Bible seminary, but I believe that I can serve God with the talent or knowledge that God has given me. So it's not necessary that I'll be preaching to people, but just helping and knowing that I am doing this for God, then for me it is an evangelist. So to become an evangelist, it is not a cultural thing for me. It is more a spiritual thing. You are responding to the call of God. Thank you.
Okay, many questions already, but I would like to, for Ajahn Ampon, with another one, and then you.
Thank you. I think you paint a very unique characteristic of the current evangelism, And you claim that it's emerged from the articulation of like U.S. Baptist churches and the current themselves, and the other thing that it's the articulation of many things at one moment of time. My question is about the current evangelists who seem to be agents of change. They went all the way to Chin State, they went to Kachin State, and their agency seemed to be huge for me, and they seem to be so powerful. If you compare it with Buddhist monks, for example, I have not seen ordinary Buddhist monks who became an agent of change like current evangelists like this. And if you're talking about the monks who can change the practice, who can change a lot of things, you're talking about the charismatic monks who have accumulated throughout the time Bun and Barami, right? But these people are just ordinary who converted, and then they went all the way, far away, and they in the end, eventually they were successful in converting other ethnic people. So I wonder what gave rise to this kind of agency, and despite like their ordinariness.
Yeah. Before forget, I think that maybe you can answer together.
Thank you. First question about gender. First question about the book. Thank you for asking. It's called Between Hills and Plains. I can't even remember the subtitle, but it's out of Trans-Pacific Press and Kyoto University Press. And I'm not sure if there are any copies left, but I can ask if you are interested. Thank you very much for your interest. I think it's not even at the Hosamut here. Okay. Okay. About gender, this is a really good question, and I actually wanted to answer this because in the very first diagram chart that I showed you, there's a small scribbling that says female teachers or something, and I didn't talk about it, but female assistants. And as much as I have read in the notes, the Karen women appear mostly as teachers in the schools, or as wives accompanying the native evangelists. And they have a lot of role, but they are never given a status other than teacher or wife. And so far as the Burma, 19th century Burma context is concerned, that's the answer. And as you point out, it's also ingrained in the mission work itself, because most of the women who came with the missionaries came as wives. There were some female missionaries who were single and came also. So I think it's really worth exploring what effects or influences that whole sort of the church structure of gender had on the later evolving of the women's role. Now, as you pointed out, there's women have a big role in the current churches, but even then, the top people in the church organizations, I think, are mostly men. I think the Teramu Esther is one very big female figure, but primarily it's a male institution. Yes?
Thank you. But in 1970s, I was involved with Wycliffe Bible Translation Institute in Texas, which they follow the linguistic school of Kenneth Pike, U of Michigan, phonology, morphology, syntax, and translation. And then I encountered, because they use Thai as a laboratory language in summer schools on the University of Washington campus. It's 74, 75, 76, something. And then I involved with them. And then so many female missionaries who came not as a couple to go out, to translate the spoken language throughout the world. And now they moved to Payap and then to Mahidol, and then so on and so forth. So I wonder whether, I didn't follow up whether or not they really gain, besides the translators, as the evangelical, if we call them according to your terminology, or as a missionary, total. But that's the only thing that I still have in my head. Thank you.
My most memorable encounter with a missionary, an American missionary, was through Emily Ballard, who was an amazing lady and a missionary, and she had lived among Karen in Burma and Thailand for more than 40 years, and so there are people like that also. The second question, Ajahn Tenda, what is the main question? Is the big question. I have many questions, but I think I've always wanted to, and you talk about it's not the culture of evangelism for you, and I really understand, because whenever I read any of this mass conversion scenes in the documents, what I recall is scenes from the Acts in the New Testament. It's exactly the same as what I read in the New Testament, and it's obviously it's a spiritual movement. So and the people who are moved to be leaders of that are especially moved by the spiritual movement. So I completely agree. But the reason why I try to use the culture of evangelism is because I think the Karen case was so striking in the early 19th century, why such a big movement took place. And the only way I could answer, and this is the question that I'm raising, what is happening here, and what was the Christianity that was taking place or evolving there. So that's my answer to those questions. And true Christian, I'm obviously criticizing this view of they are not true Christian, and as you pointed out, how do you figure this is a true Christian or not? I am a baptized Christian. I can't tell. I mean, no one can say, "Oh, Yoko is not a true Christian." And they might say, and I might say, "Oh, I'm not," But who can say? So it's. I'm not real Japanese, or I'm not. Okay, and Ajahn Ampon's question, that's very interesting too. As you say, the Buddhist, the Kuba with the Barami and what is the authenticism of these just ordinary native persons? I think Tenda would say it was the spirituality in them that moved them. But looked at from the receiving villager's point of view, what was the authenticity? And this is a really good question. And one that was in my presentation is bringing in the book and probably having the white missionary backstage gave them the authenticity that was not just them. And this is up to a lot of debate, but the reason why the early Lampang churches did not take the same kind of wave of conversion as it did in Burma was because no missionaries came. And so it was just the Karen evangelists who brought in the books from the Burma side. The Bibles were brought from the Burma side, and they tried, the first evangelist who tried to stay in Lampang, he, I won't go into the details, but he just sat there and read and read and read the Bible because he couldn't do anything else. So, you wonder what gave him the authenticity that would make people follow. And not many people did come newly as for many years in the Lampang churches, but it was the book and the presence of the evangelist, at least, that held on. So I haven't really answered your question.
Actually, when we read about Gotabu, we know that he's a slave before. He was, and this is the first Karen Christian in Myanmar. So he was a slave. So he was bought by a missionary. Maybe not exactly correct the whole things, but he was bought by a missionary. And so he worked at his house, and then he listened to the Bible. He listened to what they talk about this Christian. But he's slave because he's a criminal. He's killing people. He's murder, and that is the person that Father Vinai said that he's not real Karen. I mean that it's a kind of powerful in one way. He may have a supernatural power or something like that. And actually, this kind of people has a lot of power to change the people, to change other people. Actually, not only convert to Christianity, but convert to other. There will be many stories in many villages that there are mad or a mad Karen who say that we want to give up the ancestor spirit. Follow me. I can lead you to give up the spirit. So I can see that this Gotabu, because he may travel a lot and he learns a lot. His power, his speech is powerful. Can see from the description. I really like it. Everybody quiet and listen to him 2 hours, and he's not in the judgment of missionaries. It's silly. He talked round and round and round. He talks about many things, but only 4 points. But he talked for 2 hours. But everybody listened to him, very quiet, and listen to him. And that's the way that the Karen also talk like that. If you listen to the tale, no? If the one who can tell the story very well, maybe 1 hour, but we can just maybe the plot of the story maybe only four lines. That this one meet this one and then end up something. But the way that they talk is so. In that sense, I think that he is also charismatic. He may be not the one that missionaries say that this is a real missionary, but he's able to you say translate. But I'm not really sure. You said I think that one line I said the conversion is a translation. I mean that conversion is translation. I mean that it's not from one to another one, but what I convert because I translate the things that you tell me, but I translate into something. But this translation may not be about the word, the real translation, because the real translation, this is a problem. We can see many missionaries in Thailand when they translate that, like the Garden of Eden, something like that. Uttaya, they talk in Thai, Uttaya, very complicated work. And I think that the Karen in Maisariang, I listen to the preaching, but the Thai word translate, but the translation has a problem because you cannot find a proper word. But then translation in this case, I think that the Gotabu are able to do it. And actually what I read from your writing about what he talked about, one person have a lot of things, and when he die, he will not have anything, only the God. That is also the Buddhist theme.
Yes.
Real Buddhist theme is a suffering. you're suffering. Actually, you born with nothing. So the others are kind of illusion, something like that. So he takes some theme of the Buddhist and then try to link to the God, something like that. So so for some, I think that is charismatic, and he can convert and he travel like that. So I'm not sure that this is because of he himself, no, not because maybe yes he has a technique to talk, but his own personality or his background, even criminal, but that means that he's powerful, supernatural being. He can possess something like that. So I think that it's interesting to see why one are very successful than the one that come to Lampang, something like that.
Actually, I didn't mention this, and I didn't mention that Kotabew was, as missionaries talk about Kotabew as being a former thief. And I take it with a grain of salt because it dramatizes the story a lot. But as Ajahn Kwan said, there's something probably in Kotabew's sort of charismatic kind of personality that makes that very, that made him a persuasive person, and that kind of made the association of being a conjurer and kind of not a straightforward person. And the person in Lampang was also actually a magician. He was rumored to be a magician, and all the missionaries in Burma were really against sending him to Lampang because they thought he was a terrible magician and not real Christian. But he was the one who actually stayed on for the longest time, but he could not really teach anything, so he just sat and read the Bible, is what the record says.
You raised a question about the appeal of, the issue of charisma raises the question is whether the appeal has to do with the personality, the gift of personality of the pastor or a Buddhist monk, as against the intrinsic, what Father Vinai was talking about, the intrinsic appeal to certain theological or philosophical concepts like redemption. Do you have any comments about that, Father? There's a basic tension, I think, in the universal concept of charisma, whether it be a Christian pastor as a missionary or whether it's a Buddhist monk who also may have charismatic appeal, against the intrinsic appeal of concepts such as, you mentioned the call of God, or Christian concepts of redemption.
In terms of the history, even though Christianity and or Buddhism was the same, who will become a very prominent preacher or kind of a witness, like ในศาสนาพุทธที่ฆ่าคนและตัดนิ้วชื่ออะไรนะองคุลิมาน right Onkuliman is the one who persecuted or who killed everybody. It's like he has to have the how many ครบ100ใช่ไหมให้ครบ100เนี่ย100 to kill. Yes, special there. And also Saint Paul, who was the one who like really persecuted the church at that time, somehow against some little, I don't know, principle what you said. I think it's also that. But what I was thinking is that everyone who become most important person may be a little bit rebellion spirit, not to be, I don't know, the same as yeah. But I was thinking like this: the most successful of our missionary people is that I still call it the conversion of the symbolism, from a slave symbolism into the master symbolism or something like that. I thought it's a transformation. And even, for example, you talk about the translations. I don't like the word translation. How are you going to translate? The missionary come and know this word and translate into the people's word. They don't know. the people already have their own words to grab. That's why it's an incarnation. It's a integration, or I don't know how you call it, going to be born into that particular word. And when we talk about authenticity, I really like to have this. I think when we talk about authenticity, is a problem of the academics, you know. For example, you talk about Rai Luen Loi. Like somehow this is like the Christian Luen Loi, Christian Luen Loi. It's not real. But actually these people are the real Christians. The real Christian have to be the person. Otherwise you have abstract Christians. That's authentic abstract. Abstractly authentic, but it's not really authentic. Maybe I don't know.
Father Vinai, about the word and word translation, and also Ajahn Kwanchewan. I think can we use the word like interpretation? Yeah, it's like okay, in Thai Buddhism we talk about Thai Vikata, right? Or Thai Pidok, right? It has been translated or has been used by many Buddhist monks in many countries, but I think each country has their own interpretation from Vikata. And in this Bible also, I just wonder, a current preacher and monk preacher might have different interpretation too. So that's why I think current missionary or preacher might have good interpretation and can harmonize the Bible, right, into their current culture. So that's why the way they talk, not only in the language, right, maybe something else that they can communicate. For example, they might use the religion, the lost book, and also the brother like that. Yeah, that's my idea. So maybe Father Vinai can share more.
Hello. My name is Boonlue. I'd like to share a little bit. According to your presentation, there's so many ways to think about it, but I have something come in my mind that when you're talking about your first book, it's Hill and Plain. I think the map that you show is mostly plain areas where there is a heavy power competition in that areas, because there is most of the people is there, and because of that, I think there's many Korean people also sent to abroad and educate from US. One of them is named T. Thambia, and now the Korean re-established his name again and then make a new university nearby Saravin River called T. Thambia Christian Institute. And because of that, I think maybe related to what Ajahn Apon said is about something that able to change the other people, because I think it's because maybe knowledge that they can do it, and knowledge they can compete with the other powerful people in that area. At the same time, is distinct themselves from the other people. So the Korean has a when you say about a Christian Korean, so it means like you have another mark on your Korean, like a Korean, a Christian Korean is one mark, religion mark, and Buddhist Korean also another mark within the ethnic group. So this might be in secular explanation, but in the spiritual explanations, like Ajahn Tender said, is because of the call of God, which I totally agree of that. When we're talking about, I would like to respond to probably a little bit about the terms convert. I think I agree with him. Sometimes I also use the word becoming little bit soft than converting. I think that may be an option. But as we know that social studies is on process as well, so it will be some other word came in later, and I believe that. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the more I listen to this project, it's very interesting. And going back to what Ajahn Kwanchewan described, the characteristics of this guy, what's his name? Gotabyu. So it seemed to me that he's an orator before. Is that correct? So he worked as an orator who's coming from oral tradition, right? If you look at the ethnic leaders in this region, and I'm just referring to like Chan, revolutionary leader, he was also coming from an orator before he took up the role as a revolutionary leader. It's very interesting to hear that an orator coming from oral tradition, coming to work as a translator and translating the Bible, which in a way fixing oral tradition into text, which it's really showing the transition of current society from tradition into modernity, and it's deployed or it's mediated by the role of people coming from oral tradition, but he himself is also transformed into a modern period.
Thank you. The first initial interest for me was to undo too much emphasis on the written, because there had been so much about the Quran having the scripts and the text and the Bible, and then so they became an ethnic church, etc., etc. So too much of the very sort of modernist notion of having prints and texts that drove them to this ethnic identity. But I wanted to throw light on what came before that, which is this very face-to-face people who just walked and traveled and face-to-face orated and drew crowds and gave meaning, new meaning in words, oral text. And then later came the education, print, and all of that. So I think this is a really interesting point, and if it came through, I'm very glad. About the charisma question, I think that's something I really need to think about, and how I put this in words is a question, because I tried to avoid using the word charisma today, and I didn't want to talk about Kotabyu as the charismatic person. I slipped the tongue when I talked about the missionary abbot, and I said he was a charismatic person, but there were actually very forceful personalities in many places along this story, and some of them were very good orators, I'm sure. Not sure how to talk about it in terms of charisma, and I'm sure Tenda would say the charisma is in the gospel, not the person. So how do I legitimately talk about charisma in all of this, and how did the receiving Karen Christianizing people themselves feel? Where did they see the power is a question that I really...
Well, it's about the difference between the medium and the message.
Mm-hmm.
And the message is obviously also important, but what interests me is what is the common messages that Christianity and Buddhism have, and is it, I would suggest, basically not an issue of redemption, which is, I think, more specifically Christian, or the Word of God, or what have you, but the messianic millenarian message, which seems to be the common element to both Christian conversion and Buddhist conversion. But also, I think, and this is emphasised in the literature that I've read on the Korean, for example, your work, Kwanchewan, and Graber's work, is this urge to establish a wider moral community, or at least re-establish a moral community in a situation of social dislocation. And that seems to be a common element with Christian and Buddhist conversion.
I agree. And when I'm talking about the encounter and why was it drawing such a crowd, I think my own understanding is also that some kind of a change of an entire change of life, and a king or somebody who will lead them to that new sort of land of where they can realize
It also
this
presupposes that something is wrong in the first place. To want a different way of life suggests element of problems, social dislocation, social conflict or something, in which this urge for moral change emanates.
Yes. I agree.
Yeah, I also have, when reading, I also have a question why current preachers were sent to other groups. Because there are many current just the simple answer is that because there are many current preachers but not other groups, or there is anything behind that they choose the current to go to do some evangelism. So that's why we have this record of current going there, current always current. So I don't know why current. Because of just that there are a lot of current preachers, or because of the missionaries love current much more than other groups. I don't know, but if it is only just because of the numbers, it's okay. And another one is I think that missionaries, the foreign missionaries and the Korean preachers, they may also benefit with each other, get a benefit from each other. So missionaries may not like the Korean preachers, not totally satisfied because they are not really educated or not really, maybe not in the standard that he may set. But because of the Korean preacher, so people convert, they get a lot of converts. But at the same time, the Korean preachers also, without the missionaries, I think this is kind of symbol, no? Missionary is a symbol of powerful and also come with the resources and something like that. So that's why they have to work together and benefit from each other. So without one, then the work will not be successful, right?
I want to share some experience from my friends, my close friend. He from Shengdao, and about conversions. It's recently just surprised me because the one who just converts is his grandfather in his mother's side, and he is the chairman, 100 years old already. And I asked why the reason why he convert to Christian. He said because he is tired because the current worship it used a lot of alcohol. He tried to drink alcohol. and I think that is the answer that from internal factor that the old belief of the current old belief very burden to the people in the modern era, right? It's like they try to call everyone to come back to make some ritual before conversion. But it's not successful because one of his grandchild is living in Turkey as a migrant workers there. So it's very burdened because when the old tradition current, when they want to make some rituals, it's called the unities of the family members that come together. I think maybe Christian may be the choice for them to convert and living matching with this modern world, I think.
That's why since you said somehow like authentic and inauthentic in terms of religions, among the current people, the ritual is very delicate, it's very complicated. You cannot fulfill the very small things. So actually Christianity is more simple and but more open in that sense. It's the same, like for example the Jews culture is very complicated and very small kind of rituals also. So Christianity come. The Hinduism is also complicated, so Buddhism had to simplify things. The Thai people cannot read the Khmer because it's too complicated, so they simplify the Khmer language to the Thai. I think this is culture of, I don't know, right, something like that. The becoming. But becoming, I think is a good word because it's a you see the development, because nobody is perfect in this world. You have to become something. So now then it come into my theory of the accumulation of being in terms of the conversion. Your being current is very small. You accumulate some of the culture. Thai, very small. Thai nationalism is very narrow. You have to be like, I don't know, thinking like maybe I don't know, Indians. So your word, you have more words, things like that.
For me, I think it is almost impossible to generalize why current people become Christians or why they convert, because it will be very, very different from one person to another. Even if interview, my experience with my own people, some people they cannot really communicate what they understand or how they feel. When they answer something, they don't really communicate what inside. So it is very difficult to draw conclusion of why one person becomes a convert to Christianity or not. That is my thought. And another thing I want to whether I don't know if it is an input or not. The Christianity in Burma and Thailand, in terms of the growth of Christianity, I think it also something. It has something to do with the political background too. I think, because in Burma, apart from Buddhism, no other religions were supported by the government. So we were taught to be self-supportive since from the very beginning. Not like in Thailand. In Thailand, the government has a budget for all religions. So I think political background also has to do with the growth of Christianity in the difference of Christianity in Thailand and Burma. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I completely agree that you cannot explain conversion in one whole lump, and that's probably exactly what I wanted to say, that it has to be seen in the context, and also I don't talk about personal conversion, is why. Also, I think becoming is a really attractive term, and I might use that because I think conversion has a very finalizing kind of term, and I don't know, I'll have to think about this, but it's a very attractive way to talk about it. Also about translation, I'm using it in the sense that Raphael is using it, which is to say that he talks about Christian conversion as a translation, which is to say not that A is translated into B, but it's the same thing. He's saying that the Tagalog Christians took Christianity into themselves and they completely tamed it among themselves. So from the colonizer's point of view, it's Christianizing the Tagalogs. But from the Tagalog's point of view, it's taking something in and making it their own thing. and that's different from what we usually call translation, but that's what I meant.
ขออนุญาตให้น้องๆร้องเพลงหนึ่งเพลงเราจะได้รู้ว่าSavi the play. Bakor Savi the play. This is for the conference.
We would like to maybe if anybody have more comments or Ajahn Yoko, you want to say the last anything? So if not, we would like student to sing one song and then we will end. No? Okay?
Harmony. Very good harmony.
Teacher,